ready for a deep dive into education today. We're looking at how children learn to write, but get this, our deep dive today throws out the rule book.
Oh!
Yeah, we're looking at excerpts from this book that's like, forget grammar drills, forget rigid writing. This is kids are already natural storytellers.
Wow, that really makes you think about how we usually teach writing, huh? It's like we're so focused on correcting and instructing that we might be holding back this natural ability that's just dying to come out.
Yeah, it's like we get so caught up in the craft of writing, getting everything down on paper, that we forget where it all begins, that basic human need to share a story, an idea, an experience.
That's what's so cool about this book. It reminds us that storytelling is like hardwired into us, as humans. It's how we've always understood the world, passed down knowledge, connected with each other.
And kids, they still have that instinct. It hasn't been like drilled out of them. The book talks about this age, 7 to 9, where kids are like little sponges soaking everything up. It even says, and this is a quote, they devour stories with an insatiable hunger, committing intricate details to memory without any conscious effort. They just get completely lost in the story.
It's true. Their minds are just ready for it. Think about how easily kids can tell you their favorite stories, even the really complicated ones. They'll go on and on about Bible stories, fairy tales like Hans and Gretel, even those crazy Greek myths. We've all seen a kid totally engrossed in a good story.
Absolutely. It's like they're not even trying, it just kind of flows out of them. So if kids are already wired for this, what's the book say about how we should actually be teaching writing?
Well, instead of jumping right into the mechanics of writing, all the grammar rules and sentence structures, the book suggests we start with what they call telling.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Telling. How does that actually work in practice?
It's all about creating an environment where kids feel good expressing themselves out loud. Imagine a classroom where kids are encouraged to share their own stories, talk about what happened to them, bring their experiences to life through spoken word.
So instead of immediately writing a story, they just tell it.
Exactly. And not just tell it, but really become the story.
Yes.
Using their voices, their faces, even their bodies to make the story come alive. It's about tapping into that natural instinct to perform, to keep their audience hooked.
It's like we're giving them permission to play around with language, try out different ways of expressing themselves without stressing about getting it right on paper, right?
Exactly. And the book argues that this playful exploration, this pure joy in just telling a story, that's what builds the foundation for strong writing skills later on.
It's like they say, find something you love and you'll never work a day in your life. Or in this case, find a love for stories and writing won't feel like work.
Totally. And that's what I found so interesting about what the book says about teaching grammar. We're so used to drilling those rules, but this book, it goes in a completely different direction.
Okay, so no grammar textbooks. Then how do kids learn to write properly?
They learn by reading good writing. The book says that the best way for kids to really get grammar is naturally by being surrounded by great literature.
So instead of memorizing verb tenses, they're lost in a good book.
Exactly. It even compares it to how we learn a language naturally, just by being around it all the time. Like how little kids learn to talk. They don't study grammar books. They listen, they copy, they try things out.
That's true. I remember when I was a kid, I used to spend hours copying parts I liked for my favorite books. I didn't even realize it then, but I was picking up on sentence structures, new words, all that stuff that makes for good writing.
Right. And the book says this natural way of learning is way better than just memorizing. When kids are into a story, their brains just soak up all those grammar details without even trying.
And this makes me think about those amazing examples of student writing in the book. Like that poem by the student, the one in For My IA. Talk about powerful imagery.
Oh, yeah. And the way they wrote about Armistice Day, soldiers dying, soldiers dead, bullets whizzing overhead. It's so real, so raw. And this is coming from a kid who normally we'd think is just starting to learn how to write.
It gives me chills just thinking about it. And there's another one, that blank verse poem about the White Lady of Avenel. You could practically feel the mist and mystery coming right off the page.
It just goes to show how this approach can unlock this different kind of creativity, a depth of expression that goes beyond just putting words together the right way. It lets these kids tap into something deeper, something more powerful.
And it's not just the older kids either. There's that hilarious ballad about Echo in here, written by a 13-year-old. That had me laughing out loud.
Oh, yeah. That one's a classic. It's amazing how they took that old myth and made it so funny and relatable. It really shows how this approach doesn't just teach writing skills. It helps them find their own voice, their own style.
It's like instead of making these kids fit into a box, we're giving them the tools to build their own. But it makes you wonder, if we're not focusing on grammar rules and strict structures, what does teaching writing actually look like day to day?
That's the big question, right? And the good news is, this book doesn't just throw out a bunch of big ideas and leave it at that. It actually gets into the details of what this looks like in a classroom, or even at home, for that matter.
So how do we do it? What does the book say about creating that kind of environment, one where language can really flourish?
It all starts with what kids are exposed to. The book really stresses how important it is to surround kids with good books. And I don't just mean making them read, but like really digging in. Think lively discussions about the characters, the themes, even how the author writes.
Making those books come alive, not just another homework assignment.
Right. And it goes beyond books, too. It talks about giving kids all sorts of experiences with language, listening to storytelling podcasts, seeing plays, even just having family dinners where everyone shares stories and really talks to each other.
It's like recognizing that learning happens everywhere, not just in a classroom with a textbook.
Exactly. And here's where it gets really interesting. The book argues that this approach doesn't just make kids better writers, it makes them better communicators overall.
Now, that's something I think everyone can get behind. But how does loving stories turn into those broader communication skills?
Well, think about what makes a good story: empathy. Seeing things from different perspectives, being able to create a story that connects with your audience. Those are crucial skills for any kind of communication, whether you're writing a novel, giving a presentation, or even just talking to a friend.
It's like they say everyone has a story, but this approach gives them the power to tell it in a way that grabs people, that teaches them something, that moves them.
Exactly. And it even gives some really practical tips for encouraging this kind of creative exploration, like setting up a little writing corner with fun stationery, encouraging kids to write fan fiction based on their favorite books, just giving them the freedom to try out different writing styles without the pressure of grades or anything.
Giving them that safe space to find their voice, take risks, and really enjoy playing with language.
Exactly. And it's not just about raising the next generation of novelists or poets. Think about a world where every kid feels confident expressing themselves, where they can share their ideas clearly and passionately, where they can connect with others through the power of stories.
It's a powerful image, and it feels surprisingly possible after reading this book. So if our listeners take away one thing from this deep dive, what would you want it to be?
Don't underestimate the power of a good story. And even more importantly, don't underestimate the natural storytelling power that every child has. As educators, as parents, as a society, it's our job to nurture that gift, to make space for it to grow, and to trust that when we do, those stories will change the world.
It's about changing our perspective, seeing writing not as a chore, but as a gift, a powerful way to express yourself, connect with others, and maybe even change the world one story at a time. So as you go about your day-to-day, think about this. What if instead of drilling grammar rules, we sparked a love of language? What if instead of demanding perfect sentences, we celebrated the stories bursting to be told? The next generation of storytellers is out there, and they don't need us to tell them how to write. They need us to give them the space and freedom to remind us all of the magic that happens when we do.